Welcome back to another episode of the Frustrated CEO podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Patrick Lyons. I'm here with my friends and colleagues. Welcome, Patsy Freeman. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. Glad to be here.
Excellent. And welcome to you, Leb Tannenbaum. I'm going to kick it to you to introduce our guest.
You're going to kick it to me?
I'm going to kick it right to you.
But you're not going to kick me?
No, well, not yet. Let's see how the episode goes.
Well, we are really excited to have Kammy Horne here. There's some good things here. I'm going to just kind of read through them. She is the Senior Vice President at VIA Metropolitan Transit in San Antonio, Texas. Kammy is well-liked, often loved, and a frequently outspoken leader who cares a lot. And she gets things done with and through others. She is on the executive team at VIA.
We call it VIA.
VIA. She's on the executive team at VIA. She works closely with her CEO, stakeholders, and the riding public. She is responsible for service and capital planning, capital engineering, real estate acquisition, and management. Did I miss anything, Kammy?
We do some work with our passenger amenities, but that's okay. It's a great list, and I appreciate it.
Passenger amenities. So we are really excited to have you here. Thank you. And listen up, Frustrated CEO podcast listeners. So I thought I'd kick it off with a question. You've been with VIA for it's 2 years now, right?
3. Mm-hmm.
3 years.
Just coming on 3.
Just coming on 3. Okay. So what are some of the greatest challenges you've faced? I mean, you've gone through a pandemic, you've come in from another location, there's probably many to sort through, but what are some of the greatest challenges you faced as a leader since joining VIA in 2019?
Oh, well, thank you for the question. Thank you so much for the kind introduction as well. May I say something before we answer the question?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to take a pause and just recognize that there's a lot going on in our world right now.
Yes.
And there are some incredible stressors and some things, and I'm specifically, I just want to specifically mention what is going on with the invasion of Ukraine that causes. I just wanted to just pause and recognize just the gravity of what is going on in our world right now. So thank you for letting me do that.
Kammy.
Yes, thank you.
I really contemplated doing exactly the same thing. So this is how Kammy leads. She has something on her heart or her mind, and she's going to say it. And I love that about you, Kammy. My wife is from Russia, and we have people, loved ones, and family members in Russia and Ukraine, and it's very hard. So we'll just acknowledge that, and all the other things that are going on about that and around us, and maybe that's kind of a kickoff for it, where we have been working through some really challenging times.
And I definitely will go back to the question, so I think some of the challenges that I've had. Well, first of all, I never really saw myself in my career in a position like this. I worked in the private sector for a long time. And so, one of the big challenges before COVID or anything is coming into the public sector when this is I'm just going to get right to it and be direct, that you can't necessarily motivate people through money all the time. You can't just, you can't hand out, big, bonuses or really any other type of, major raises, just, like that. It just doesn't happen that way. And so that is something that, someone asked me recently, how do you motivate your staff? And I said, well, I try to find out what motivates them first. And that's not something I probably would have said, 5 years ago, because now I do listen. Sometimes, there are people that don't love it when you send an email of praise and copy the whole world, including the CEO. That's like abhorrent to them. And there's other people that would love to see that every single day pop up on their computer. So I've tried to figure out a balance of my own leadership and really balance of myself and how I'm interacting with people to make sure that there's a pleasant environment. And that, that was way before COVID. So that's one thing I'll say what was a little bit of a challenge coming in. And another thing is that I'm learning as I'm leading every single day. I was asked to come in to deliver a really big program called VIA Reimagined that we definitely had to change because of COVID, and that's now Keep San Antonio Moving. But we had to make some changes and do all that in the face of the changing landscape, and people being pretty stressed about what was going on in the world. So there were a lot of things that I did take a pause to think about. How am I showing up? How am I showing up in any particular situation? For us in the transit industry, there was some very, very quick pivots in terms of our scheduling and service planning. One of the things was because we were limiting the amount of people that could be on a bus. The other thing was we were carrying, we definitely saw, especially in San Antonio, we were carrying essential workers, and we wanted to make sure that we were, fully covered on those important routes. And so, there were a lot of things that we just had to jump in and learn as we go along. But then for me, as a leader of a large group, also really make sure everybody's doing okay. And so there was a lot, and I feel really happy about the way we all have come through. But I definitely was learning, and I asked questions. So I asked questions of other people, like, I talked to my colleagues and, how are you doing this? And, one of the things was, well, check in with people. If you feel like you're not doing enough, check in with people. So I actually got the phone list of the entire group that I'm leading, and called every single person on the list. And I just said, hey, how you doing? I mean, and some people were like, why are you calling me? Like, am I doing this? And I said, no, I really want to know, how are you doing? And those conversations, although they were somewhat time consuming, I learned from them too, because, I'm listening and I'm sharing, and they're listening and they're sharing. And, sometimes it was something real personal, like how, you're managing through. And sometimes it was like, hey, go get a ring light. It makes your face look better. Things like that. So it's been a journey, but it's the challenges, we continue to work through them. One of them right now is our operator shortages. So, that's forced us to take a step back on our plan. By the way, the Keep San Antonio Moving plan that I mentioned that we had to pivot to, it was presented to the voters a year ago, last November, and it was very successful. So that was a joyful outcome in a tough time. So we try to be positive and celebrate the happy things as well. And I will say that I work for an awesome leader. Jeff Arndt is our CEO, and I have an awesome team. And so, above everything else, I love showing up, and it's been okay. We've come through okay.
That's fantastic.
Yes,
That's
it
great.
is.
Kammy, I have a question. You led with, in essence, recognition is personal, right? It's you have to find out what motivates each person, and I do think that's an inhibitor for some leaders who want to recognize their people. They look at their budget and they say, I don't have a budget to recognize people, therefore I don't give recognition. You made a great point. Not everybody's motivated by money. What other ways have you found that you've been able to motivate your people? Or what are some of the other ways that your people are motivated so that a listener can go, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Sure.
Well, one of the things, I'm going to start with something really simple, and then I'll talk about some other things. One of the things as a leader, I think to anyone who directly reports to you, is being open to listening to their needs. Because I do think that people often leave because of like who they work for or what their feeling is in that. So I do try to tell people. And I mean it in all sincerity, although sometimes I'm going to be honest and self-aware that I can get defensive. Everybody does.
Yep.
And I work on that every single day. But one of the things I do tell people is if there is something that I'm doing or saying or something you're feeling that's keeping you up at night, it's not about work, not something that you need to get out, that's your own thing. If there's something that, like a way that I'm interacting with you or something that's keeping you up at night, please share that with me. Because that stuff should go in the garbage can. Like, we should work on that, because life is too short to stay awake at night wondering if something my boss said meant this or that kind of stuff. I've been through that in my career, and it's something that makes me crazy because it really throws your whole week off, right? So I tell people that, and I mean it. Now, am I always like, oh, sure, I can fix that? No, sometimes it's like a little bit of a conversation, because I'm not perfect, but I do try to listen to that. So that maybe is a little bit of a simpler thing, is just, listening, listening to those things. But I think, one of the other things is flexibility. And now the flexibility with telecommuting, maybe that's an obvious one, or maybe not. Because now it's like, oh, going back to the office, do we need to go back there? And I said, well, we need to get the work done, right? We need to get the work done. And some people here at VIA, they cannot work remotely, but some people can. And so, being flexible, and then, paying attention and listening to people's strengths and helping people and focusing on their strengths. What do you do really, really well? What do you wish you didn't do, didn't have to do? I mean, maybe we reorganize so that you can focus on more of the stuff that you like to do, and it's like, oh, I never thought of that. Like, yeah, because you're so great at that, and somebody else could help you, and they love the thing you don't like to do. So I think being creative, even in the public sector, and just trying to work on, work on things all of those things I think can be motivating. But I'm not perfect. I just try.
That's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So kind of in the same vein, Leb mentioned quite a diverse audiences that you interact with, from the public to stakeholders to the board.
Mm-hmm.
Just as you're talking about what motivates your people, how do you find, what have you learned about connecting with such a wide and diverse group of people?
That, in terms of how you show up, I think with certain, with other people, so that's something I've learned too, because I never had to make presentations, to a board as the agency, and those types of things. So, I think that that I try to learn about the roles and responsibilities of the individuals that I'm interacting with. And also I do think about, common outcomes that we might want to have in any conversation, or an outcome that I might want to have with a presentation I'm giving. I think about those things a lot. If I show up and I'm trying to work out a solution to something with maybe another agency or stakeholder that has a different mission, I think recognizing, okay, your mission is, housing or the streets, or, you're responsible for, keeping the lights on in the community, and just really thinking about what the mission is for that other entity. And then just being thoughtful about that. Like, you might want to come in and present on something and getting a rousing round of applause, and we're all going to move forward like that, and not stop to really think about, well, how, where is that other, stakeholder coming from? So it's been definitely very different because it's, in the private sector, I more got kind of jobs to do this, put this together, and all that stuff's already been thought of. And for me, that's something that I've had to learn a little bit more, and I'm still learning. I mean, learning every day about that. I hope that answers the question.
No, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's a constantly changing landscape, right?
It is.
Both internally and externally.
It is. And since we're talking freely, I'm going to share something that someone told me. They said, stop saying that, Kammy. Stop saying, I hope that answers your question. Did I get it right? Because they said, you're a woman in our industry and that makes you sound less confident. I'm like, really? Because I say it a lot. And they said, yeah, you do. So you should stop saying that. So anyone out there that does what I just did to answer that question, like maybe don't do it, or check with others to see how it's coming across.
It's actually a good reminder for me. I've got my couple of pet ones that I say as well. So I appreciate that reminder.
I think that's awesome. Kammy, can you talk about what it's been like to be a woman in the transportation, a woman leader in the transportation industry?
Sure. Because, I've always been a woman, and I've been in the transportation industry for 25 years. I've always tried to be a leader, but I've not always been in this position. So at different stages of my career, different things have been challenging. And I'm saying that to folks out there that might be thinking, okay, well, I'm in this, I have 2 children. I was lucky enough that my husband paused his career and stayed home with them for a very long time. But I was in the working world, and navigating that. And I would say that was a bit challenging to navigate thoughtfully. I mean, different challenges at different parts of my career, but learning how to balance being what I thought a mom, had to be, and then also, what I thought, the primary breadwinner needed to be. And, that was a challenge, because I had to get creative on how to balance my time and feel good about that. And so that took a lot of talking to other women in our industry. I've been very involved in WTS. It stands for Women's Transportation Seminar. And that's helped me a lot in my career, because it is a network of men and women in the transportation industry. It's really, I've moved around a lot in terms of location, and I've always had a great network to talk to people about being a woman in the industry, and about leading with confidence and showing up and just being, trying to do my best in the world at any given moment, being a woman. So I think there's just been different challenges at different stages of my career. And, I think everybody has their own challenges, and, but WTS has helped me be quite a bit, and love to talk about that more sometime.
So even since you've been open, I'll be open as well. Even as I was asking that question, I was almost cringing, thinking a man in leadership in transportation would not have been asked that question. So I apologize. I hope there was no offense meant. It's more of like, what are the challenges, so that a listener who's experiencing the same things can be encouraged, can hear about organizations like WTS and can overcome them. So
no worries at all. I mean, because it's thoughtful. It's a thoughtful question, and it's important. It's an important question. And the other thing too, that, maybe it's overused, but I'm going to say it because so many women have reached out to me and paid it forward. So, they've actually, I'll just tell this quick little story. But I was sitting in a WTS conference one time, and I had a woman very, very, very well regarded, appointed on a major board in transit by that state's governor. I mean, everyone knows this person. And she tapped me on the shoulder and she said, Kammy, call me after the conference. Here's my number. I want to talk to you. And I'm like, oh no. So I got back home, and I told my husband and my kids, y'all go out and no noises in the house, because this important person, I'm going to call her right now. I don't want any noises. And I I called her, and she just had the most open, thoughtful, amazing conversation with me, so direct. She said, where do you want to go with your career? You were looking a little bit less than, yourself. You were looking a little down. And she said, where do you want to go? And we actually talked, and that was a very life-changing conversation for me, because number one of her recommendations to me, that if I wanted to do more in leadership, get involved in your community, took that advice. And then the other thing that she told me, and this was huge, was get an executive coach. And I'm like, oh, I can't afford that. And she's like, really, let's talk about that. And let's talk about where you said you wanted to be and what you're spending your money on now. And can you? And so I'll tell you, those two pieces of advice were awesome. And that was a woman who just saw me sitting there, maybe with my head down, and said, I'm going to reach out to this person. And now she's a really lifelong, I text her. She's helped me prepare for interviews. And there's a number of women in my life that have been like that. But that was an amazing pay it forward moment for me. And I try to do the same. So I'll say really briefly too, that I have been involved in leading mentorship programs for women through WTS, and most of the chapters in Phoenix and Austin, and now in San Antonio. And a series that I'm working on now is just a series that I work with women to tell their real stories and give their real advice to people coming up. So I'm trying to pay it forward as well.
That's
So
fantastic.
great.
Yes.
Kammy, I want to reel it back a little bit to earlier stage in your career, trying to figure out with young children, and your husband makes a move, and now take it to the current. Kids get older, but this is a very big leadership position for you.
Yeah.
Are the challenges the same? Are you finding there are other challenges that maybe listeners should be thinking about as they move along in their career? And it's not just, all that's probably still there, but I'm just wondering if there's anything else you're experiencing that people might want to know about.
So am I hearing it correctly, sort of how things have changed now that my children have gotten older, and what those
Yeah, right. We still want to connect with them. You have relationships that really matter. You're in a bigger position. You're interacting with, I'm just listening to you. You're a mentor. You're doing so many different things. And you're connecting, calling everybody that works with you and asking them how they are. Is it hard? Are the challenges different? Is it hard to maintain your balance?
The challenges are different. That's such an interesting question, and I will try to answer it as thoughtfully and as honestly as I can. So yes, the challenges are different, right? So I, for example, I'm not thinking about how I can plan my day to make sure I get to baseball practice, or to make sure I get to that. The play, something like that. I don't have to do that. There's no, medical appointments that I need to get my kids at, so those things, that planning around that is really different. The one thing I will say though is that as the primary breadwinner, one of the things that did occur to me now that, so I have a son who is graduating from college, and one that's graduating from high school. And so I'm glad I found VIA. I'm glad I found the public sector, and I love it. And why do I say that? Because I've often paused now, because I have just been go, make sure I would think about things like, if my performance review is poor, I have failed my family. That's how serious I took things.
That's hard.
Go, run, get it done. And then I thought, I was actually lying awake the other night. So I keep myself awake, so that's my own issue. But I was laying awake the other night thinking, okay, how will it be when it's not just about your kids, like making sure they were completely set. Like, have you found your passion? And I do feel that I've found my passion, but I do think that that transition could be a little jarring. And it probably, once my kids actually graduate, so that's in a few months, I'll probably have to revisit that. But it has made it easier for me to spend more time with other people and do a lot more volunteer work. So I will say that. Anyway, that's
great.
some thoughts.
You reminded me of a story, so I'll share it.
Okay.
When I was in that go, build a consulting company, overwork, lots of clients, whatever the case may be, I thought because I would make it home on Fridays, because I was literally traveling a lot, and I would be to every soccer game on Saturday and every play, and and then I'd continue on Sunday, and then I would leave again for 4 days. And I thought, man, I'm just doing great. I'm like, and then I had a health slip, and I'm home, and I'm sitting on the couch with my 12-year-old daughter. She said, I'm glad you had this health crisis. And I looked at her like, why? She said, because I know you were working really hard at it, but I don't feel like I know you. And I was stopped in my tracks.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminds me of the woman who saw you, and gave you a call and said, let's get real. Let's talk about where you're at.
Leb, you're making me have to tell my story now, because this really happened to me, and it will show you that I was not perfect, but I'll tell you something that happened to me over the summer. So with my younger son, the one that's graduating from high school, I took him on a trip this summer. It was kind of like do a lot of hiking and, little camping and that kind of thing. I will never forget this moment, because I was cooking some dinner, and he looked up. He's like, Mom. I'm like, what? He's like, what's crazy about this trip? And he said, no, what? And he's like, you haven't been working at all. And I'm like, wow, gosh, like, you're 17 years old. I'm just going to go in the bathroom and cry for a few minutes and come back out and finish dinner.
Yeah.
It's like what you said about.
I hear you. Yeah, I was emotionally, I was just floored. But it was, as I look back on it, we're close. And I did change some things, and I needed to, but I didn't expect to get that kind of coaching from my 12-year-old daughter.
Well, it's awesome. How old is she now? Should I ask?
I shouldn't say that, but
okay.
She's successfully old enough to be pursuing her acting career and having some really good successes.
Oh, that's awesome.
You can check her out on the reboot of Sex and the City. She's in And Just Like That.
Okay.
Two episodes, 8 and 9. So that's enough. I won't say anymore.
Awesome.
But what's kind of fun is now we have to work to get any communication from her, because she's working so hard. And I just love the balance, the movement in our relationships with each other, which brings me to another thing. So some of the things you're doing, I put in the context of building trust. Like, you come in and you're relatively new to, you're new to the agency, and you're doing things maybe a little differently. Can you talk about, yes, you called and you connected with people, and what are some of the other things that you do to know that trust is in place, or trust is eroding or growing, not only inside the agency, but that's a big deal in your position, trust also with stakeholders and outside of the agency.
Building and keeping trust is so important. I'm glad that you brought it up. It's been a lot harder with COVID, because I think it is. I'm not like saying, like we shouldn't do telework, and I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that getting used to people, and if you haven't met someone before, all you're doing is sort of hearing their tone and seeing their face, but you're not really getting a full effect of their body language. And then in many cases, you're not seeing someone's faces, right? Because you're wearing a mask. And, and so I think, but anyway, in terms of building trust, one of the things I try to do is just follow through and follow up on my commitments. Because I think that the more you build trust, things get done quicker, faster, easier, because little mistakes, you're not going to make, if you've built trust with someone and then suddenly you do something it's maybe a mistake or whatever, someone's not going to dismiss you if you've built your trust with them. They're probably going to pick up the phone and say, hey, did you mean to do that? But they're not going to like internalize it and be like, oh, why is Kammy doing that? That's horrible. Or, it's not going to escalate. It's just going to be part of, whatever process. Right. So I think that, I think trust is incredibly important. And I try to always follow through on my own commitments, so that, and be very honest, and keep my words positive, find an outlet for the things that I need to say that are negative, that is not going to erode the trust around me, because I don't think you can just be like, I'm happy and positive. I do think you need to find outlets, even, sometimes in your professional network, where you can find a safe space to just dump it. But that space can't be in that work, in your immediate work colleague, because that's not okay. And then, but I do think that the trust building, I'm contemplating that now, because, even in recent weeks, I've had to sit back and think about that. And I think, being self-aware too, is really, really important, because if someone doesn't trust you, and then you're just like, well, why don't you trust me? Like, I'm so trustworthy. One of the things I think that's really important to stop and recognize is that's their perception, and their perception is real. So maybe stop and think, what is it that you're doing? Because it's probably something that's making them feel that way, that they're not going to trust you. And I do find that sometimes that's necessary. And that's really tough, really, 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 really hard for a leader, I myself included. I mean, I find it really difficult to work on spaces that don't feel like there's a trust-based relationship, and try to fix that or work on it, because it takes some self-correction too. In some way, shape, or form, no one is always right and no one's always wrong. But saying it is a lot easier than recognizing it and working on it.
Yeah.
So one thing you had said when you responded to Leb a few minutes ago was not only building, but keeping trust. And so a lot of what you're talking about is that kind of ongoing learning of two people or more people. How do you, it does get broken.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
It can at least get bent, and then you have to rebuild it. So I think that in itself is a huge piece of self-awareness.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. And people watch you, and they see your words. And if I'm out saying things that are negative about another individual, that person would clearly think, oh gosh, is that really how she is? I don't want to be that. I don't think that adds to our world in any positive way. I just don't.
So it's been really divisive in the public, like wondering, is there anything, specifically that you do, like, with, this when you're in the public, and maybe sometimes somebody's mad about something, like you're talking about doing something that's going to impact me or my neighborhood, or have you had anything that really works for you when you're in a public room and somebody's disagreeing, or you feel like they just don't trust what I'm saying here?
Well, so I am not a public outreach specialist. I want to say that, first and foremost, because I recognized a long time ago, I don't think I am always the best person in that, like, to lead that
Okay.
area.
Mhm.
But as a leader and for what I do, of course, I'm in the public, and of course, I hear from people. And what I do not like is feeling like I'm I always want to listen. And so a couple things, I'll just say I've really tried to work on my listening skills a little bit more. And especially like if I'm going to go to a public meeting where I know there's going to be, I do have to stop and think, okay, and maybe this goes back to Patsy, something that you said before. I have to think about how I'm going to show up. And so in that situation, I really, really prepare for meeting with the public. One of the things I do, and this really goes for anything where I really have to show up, I do try to think about how much sleep that I'm getting before that important meeting, how much water I'm drinking, because I think drinking water kind of can help, kind of relieve the stress and help you show up a little bit better. And then if I'm going to an environment where, it is a public, meeting where we're talking, I really, really consciously think about listening. I do. And I remind myself, sometimes I'll even put like sticky notes up around me before. Listen. I think I have a sticky note up. No, I have a sticky note here, even like I put sticky notes. It says, take a breath. And because I think it's really important, because the public is who is going to be using whatever it is we do. And so they need to get me at my best. And I need to show up at my best, and I need to listen. And listening can be hard. And then I need to respond in a way that is as smart as I can be, as responsive as I can be, as creative as I can be. And that's really what I've done. I know I've taken a bit of time to answer this question, but it's
great.
hard for me. And it's something that I really, really prepare for. Because I mean, that's, if we're not doing right by our customers or the public, then we're just not doing it right. That's because that's who we are here to serve.
Yeah. You know what I love about this? Everything you just said, 100% applies to a leader in the private sector as well, right? It's about getting your sleep, getting your water. Take this to self-care. It's listening and responding at your best, showing up at your best, so you can, because they need what you're about to say. So, so it's kind of the appeal to the listener right now. All of this, it doesn't matter, leadership in the public or the private sector. Obviously, there are some subtle differences in industry and maybe governance, but aside from that, leadership is leadership. So actually, that leads me to a question, Kammy, about leadership, or at least a story. My understanding is about several months ago, you were on your way to a meeting and your car broke down.
Yes.
Tell us what happened.
Okay, sure. So I was on my way to a meeting, and my car broke down, and it was during a rainstorm, and I was getting really upset because I had to wait for the tow truck, and then I'm like going to be late for the meeting. But I was across the street from bus stop, and didn't have an umbrella, but I went over and I got on the bus and got to where I needed to go. And something just hit me, like, you need to be riding the bus. And I decided that when the car got fixed, that I actually ended up giving it to one of my sons, which he'll probably trade in because it wasn't his choice. But I decided not to have a car anymore, and I don't have a car anymore. And it's been a great journey of learning. And it's a little embarrassing that to me that, like, it took 2 years of me, working in public transit to actually ride the bus a lot, and truly use our bus apps and think about, how we're serving customers. Now I have to say, I do, I have a choice, right? Not everybody has a choice. I could have, kept my car. I could buy another car. I don't have the drop off with kids. I have an easier situation to where, I can make it work. And in an emergency, I can use an Uber or Lyft if I need to. I actually try not to do that. But I'm learning so much. And I really try to make a deliberate effort to use the bus at all times, use the bus to get groceries. What does that feel like? How is that? How are, and paying attention to our ride apps. And, it's been great. A few things had hit me, about it. Someone, I was downtown the other day and someone came up to me and said, "Hey, I need to get here. Can you help me?" And I immediately could. I just pulled out my app and it was easy. And that didn't happen like that before. I just had to do it. That would be like, I don't know. And then I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm a senior vice president at VIA and I can't stop for a second here and really help this person figure it. Well, now I can, because I do it all the time. I can talk about the apps. I can talk about the benefits. I can talk about the challenges. And, another positive thing that's come from it is that I've learned to accept a few more things from other people. Sometimes people will offer me a ride and I never would have asked people for rides. And, I have a colleague sometimes that goes out to lunch or goes and gets their lunch and they'll say, "Hey, you want to go?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, I'm going to run through and get a whole bunch of groceries at the same time. So is that okay?" "Yeah, that's fine." And so that's what we'll do, on our lunch hour. And that's super helpful. And something, actually, I'm going to share this real quick. Someone gave me a ride somewhere last night that does not have use of their legs and uses a hand device to operate their car. And when they first offered me the ride, I was like, "Really? Okay." And she said, "This will be a learning for you, Kammy. Come on. I'm going to show you how I put my wheelchair in the car and how I operate this vehicle."
Wow.
And seriously, that happened. And I'll finish this story by saying that she dropped me off at one of the VIA transit centers last night. And I got on with my employee badge, and it's a great thing because our employee badge is also a bus pass. So that's great. And so the operator, it was later, and I told the operator, where I was going. I hadn't used that bus line before. And I said, I'm going to transfer here. Right. And he said, "Well, the bus is going back to the garage and you're an employee. If you want to stay on." I'm like, "Really? I can?" Because the garage is like really, really pretty close to where I live. And anyway, it was just a great conversation. And I met another one of our awesome operators. And it was just such a joyful learning experience that I never would have had if I was driving my own car. So it's been awesome. Thank you for asking about it. It's just, I love it. I love that. I love riding the bus.
I think, thank you for sharing. Thank you for doing it. It's a great story. And I think I said, to me, I file that under leadership because you hear that a lot from senior leaders, wanting to hear the voice of the customer, wanting to know what the customer is saying, want to know what the customer is experiencing, and thinking, well, one way to do that is to actually immerse yourself into the customer experience. And you not only did that for, like you see Undercover Boss, where the boss will go undercover for a week. Okay, cool. It makes for great television, but you've done it now for months and there's no end in sight. And right, so it's why? Because you can't learn everything in a week. So to me, that's leadership. It's a great story. Yeah.
Thank you. And it's just great. I mean, it really touched me last night too, because I'm getting on that bus and I'm like, I haven't taken this line before, and the operator is just so kind and like stops and is helping me, and then he just said, "Well, what do you do at VIA? Are you one of our operators?" And I said, "No, I work for the CEO, and I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna send a note about you because you're awesome, and thank you for," it wasn't like, "Oh, Kammy Horne, Senior Vice President, I'm going to be helpful. No. And when I took a seat back, I just saw that awesome behavior of that person helping our customers. And there is no end in sight. I'm going to take the bus. Now I take the bus other places. I tell people how to take the bus, and it's great. So, but again, not everyone has that option. And I want to make it clear that I don't think everybody does have that option.
Yeah, it's good.
And for some people, it's the only option.
For many people,
Right.
That's what you're pointing out. It's for some
100%.
people. Yes.
I love that you said that. And with VIA in San Antonio, let me just say one thing. When COVID hit and we were all like shelter in place, our ridership only dropped ever to about 50%. So like 50% of our riders needed VIA for essential trips. Just to your point, they had to. I mean, no, people weren't leaving their houses, but our ridership. I mean, some systems dropped like by 90%. We never dropped below around the 50% mark, which really, and truly says exactly what you just pointed out, that there are some people that absolutely need it. And if I can do a little bit more, and the team at VIA has been great. When I see something, I say something, whether it be something like the next bus isn't maybe syncing right, and they like fix everything, gets addressed. And if I see somebody maybe that's in need at one of our at our stops, I message our safety team. There's been a lot of things like that, and nobody's like, oh, don't, everybody's like, oh yeah, thank you. And then of course, obviously recognizing the positive. I always try to, get the operator number, and just say, hey, this operator on this line, I noticed this awesomeness. So anyways, I could talk a lot about it, obviously.
Yeah.
Great.
So tell me if this makes sense for this podcast. But you mentioned that you have a really great CEO, right? And I'm sure there are times the CEO is frustrated, and just wondering, what you think makes the CEO kind of fit into the great category. What some of the frustrations might be that you talk about at the senior staff that are maybe in some way instructive to the people who are listening, because who knows, maybe at some point you're going to be in that position. And the context that I'm placing it in is we coach a lot of CEOs. And one of the things that people talk about is that it can be really lonely at the top. And so some of the coaching is we're a safe place for people to talk to us about whatever, and it may not even be anything about work sometimes, but you have this relationship that you value, and it's working, and just wondered if that triggered any thought for you that might be helpful for people listening in.
Sure. I'll say a couple things about that. So I think I do think that Jeff Arn, our CEO, is tremendous. He's a tremendous leader. He leads with his heart. He talks a lot about servant leadership, and it really comes across. And I mean, the other thing is, he leads with trust, and he leads with acceptance, and leads with that belief, like, you start at a good place. And that's something that I've learned too. And that's tremendous. And listening and thinking and being flexible, even though we're in the public space, like, okay, can we try it differently? Well, tell me why, and give me that, give me the information on why that solution could look good. The openness to positive solutions. I think that's all been really great. One thing I'll say maybe to others who might be working with CEOs that are open, and one thing I've learned too is that you never want to take that kind of a leader for granted if you're working for a leader. And why do I say that? Because I think sometimes those leaders really put themselves out there, and they are maybe more vulnerable or more, that's not the word, but just more open.
Mhm.
And you don't, I think it's the thing that the trap you can fall into is almost like not coming with a solution, really going too quickly to that leader with like dumping the problem, right? Because you know that person's going to talk it out with you, and you know that that's going to, and so that's one of the things that I definitely have tried to work on, is don't take that type of a leader for granted. Don't take their leadership style for granted. Always respect that, and always try to come with a solution, not the problem, even though after you've built the trust-based relationship, they're probably not going to close the door on you just coming in with the problem, but respect all of the things that they have on their plate, and try to always show up with the solution, or at least part of the solution. But I think that, learning to listen, learning to be creative, learning to be thoughtful, all of those things, I've definitely had the benefit of working for our CEO who has those traits.
Yeah, that's great. You just reminded me of something. When I was working with Lori Ann Hoffman at New York City Transit in the Department of Subways, we were looking for mentors to the younger workforce. And we got a bunch of people together who were senior and staff people, very experienced people. And one of the things that came to the surface as a frustration is that these young people will just walk right into my office. They'll just ask me questions or want to have a conversation. and so, but yeah, we were going to say, these are people, that we're looking for mentors for. Have you seen anything about the differences in the age groups that work in the agency, and any traits that you're talking about to help each other out? Or
no, I mean, not necessarily. Maybe not generationally. One of my kids told me that, like, talking about the generations was stereotyping and I should never do it. And that's kind of like stuck in my head, like, oh, really? Like, okay. So, I mean, not to put anything off of what you said, but so I would say that different people at different stages of their career and coming from different parts, like it maybe not be, in transportation, may show up differently and different than I'm used to. So that's something that I've had to get used to. Like, they may not want, I mean, little things like maybe they don't always copy you on certain messages because that's not their style. Or maybe they're more used to communicating with text than email, or, different things like that. I mean, but sometimes I will say that in those situations, or situations where someone has an idea that just seems like, no, that would never be, that would never work. And they're newer to VIA, or maybe coming from a different industry. I've actually, had to pause and say, well, what parts of that could work? And don't just shut that person off, or shut the idea off, because that's just like really demoralizing too. And I don't want to be that person that squashes good ideas. But that's been learning for me too, because I did not show up in the working world with that kind of a personality. So I definitely have to stop and say, what of that, whatever it is you're doing, is good, and good to move forward.
Thank you.
I almost asked, did I answer your question?
Yeah, and you even used your one of your children as a coach.
I was gonna say I didn't know if you answered the question, but it was a great answer anyway. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, Kammy, there was an article that you wrote where you said, and I'm quoting, communication must be two-way and easily seen, understood, and usable for everyone. Now, I understand the two-way, right? You've already talked about the importance of listening. Tell me what you mean by, I think I get seen, understood, but specifically usable for everyone.
Mm-hmm. So I think, and that was an article, I believe, that was written specifically in how we communicate with our passengers. So when I say usable for everyone, we have to consider, everyone, even those that might be, sight impaired or hearing impaired or some, so kind of broad range. But our passenger information, and now that I use our passenger information on a daily basis, I think about how that communication comes across. And I think you said usable for everyone. So that's really what I meant, like the broad spectrum. Make sure that our messages are, able to be, communicated to everyone. I definitely was talking about that. And then in a little bit more detail too, that, when we have messages that we send out about a stop that might be closed or a detour, think about how that wording might come across. Does it sound alarming? Does it sound permanent? Is it permanent? How does it sound? But specifically when, that I really was, I think in that article talking about passenger communication and passenger information.
Thank you. So now that you're talking about passenger, or now that I know you're talking about passenger communication, how do you make it two-way? Because again, take this into the private sector, take this into really any business. You made great points. The communication, are we asking, how is this going to sound? How will this come across? Is it usable by everyone? How do you make it two-way?
Well, we make it two-way because you can always get in touch with VIA, and we look at customer comments on a daily, ongoing basis, and respond to comments and concerns. So that's one thing. The two-way is that our customers can get back to us, and then the other thing I'm super excited about that VIA just started doing is really an active outreach survey of our customers, to find out, hey, is VIA taking you where you need to go? Is it, at the times that you need, all of these things. And that's being done through our public outreach. And it's really cool because we've got some amazingly positive responses from that. And it's, that's exciting. That's exciting for the people that work here. It's exciting for our whole team. It's going well for people, and we're going to keep doing that. So we're going to be actively continuing to survey our customers, to survey people that aren't currently our customers. What are the needs there? So I think that's really the two-way. And then responding is important to, and listening. However that communication comes across, two-way has to be two-way, because if someone has a concern, we need to get back with them and explain to them or fix whatever it is that they're concerned about.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other questions before we start to wrap this episode up? Kammy, anything you want to ask us? Patsy, go ahead.
I don't have a question. I just know that when Leb introduced you and we were getting started, he said that you were outspoken and that you cared. And sometimes that can seem like a contradiction of terms for a leader. That leaders can't be outspoken and caring at the same time. So I'm really excited to get into to get practical, because you've given us, an hour of really great examples about how you can do both, and how by doing both, it makes you a better leader. So I just appreciate your candidness.
Thank you so much, Patsy. And thank you, Patrick and Leb. I appreciate your asking and been very thoughtful. Yeah. So.
And just to clarify, what, outspoken, I guess, can be taken, put in a negative connotation.
Yeah.
But you've already demonstrated what it's like in a positive connotation right here today. You speak up. You say what's on your heart. You say what's on your mind. And it's I think it's a wonderful kind of playful way to say, yeah, I mean, if you're going to, Kammy shows up. Kammy has things to say. And it doesn't mean unfiltered. It doesn't mean brash, any of those other things. I guess, the only other thing that, I would add to this, and if you want to say anything in wrapping up, is, you basically describe yourself as a lifelong learner. And, one of the things that we say when we're working with executives is, feedback is your friend, and no one's a finished product. Right. So I just want to thank you for living that and sharing some of the best points about that. It's really
Can I say a funny story really quick?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I always have to work on my tone. I always have to work on my directness. I'm not perfect. I am not perfect. So I'm going to say this story. And if the person that knows this story is listening to this, that's okay. Because I was talking about, how to coach someone else to lead a particular part of our project. And I said to one of my leaders, just tell them to be kind of like me, like direct and just get to the point. That'll serve us well. And she said, well, I said, well, yeah, what are you going to say? She said, well, sometimes the way that comes across is a little rude. And I was like, what? And she was like, well, just sometimes it does. And so I could have walked away from that conversation and been like, no. But I said, tell me more. Tell me more. What does that sound like? Leb, that's something that I think that you've coached on. What does that sound like? Oh, it's my tone. Oh, it's the pace of my speech. Patsy, when you said, outspoken, actually, I have to work on that sometimes. Like, oh, maybe it's because I interrupted. Now, you can't be perfect and not every day is perfect. But, I did stop and say, tell me more instead of don't ever say that to me again, because that was a learning moment.
That's great.
That's a great, a great example of being committed to being a lifelong learner, because learning is messy and sometimes painful.
Oh, that's a really good way. Messy, yes. What were you going to say?
Messy. We're human beings, for heaven's sakes, regardless of where we work or what we do.
No, we are. We are human beings. And we always, people are not just showing up at work as just a worker. There's something else in their life that they're showing up as.
Yeah.
Thank you anyway for opening that.
Sure.
That was great.
So we're ready
to get practical?
Let's get practical. I think we just mentioned our first one, right? Be a lifelong
learner. Oh, that's good. Okay. So yes, so this is the part of our part of every show where we try to give our listener practical applications, specific things that they can think about or do or implement starting today, starting tomorrow in his or her business to make inroads in any of the areas that we've talked about. So, Kammy, we'll give you the first opportunity to weigh in. What are some of the bigger takeaways, the key points that you might add to this episode of Let's Get Practical?
So one of the biggest things, maybe I'll say one big thing, is take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. Take care of yourself from your health. If you're able to exercise in some way, take care of yourself. You're number one. You cannot give and be a great leader if it's like all going out and nothing's taking care of yourself. And I've learned that. And I think that, the other thing about that is, thinking about, I don't know what they're called, but I'm sure someone knows, but it's that wheel where you're, different things of value in your life, whether it's family or work or, maybe it's religion or whatever it is in your life, and see where you're putting your time and making sure that where you're putting your time is where, is a good balance for you. But I think that just making sure that, you're taking care of your mental health. We didn't talk about mental health at all in this time. And I just think that that's super, super important. Because you have to be able to show up with your best self in the best way that you can. So that's something, I think I'll leave it at that.
Good.
Wow.
You can add as many as you'd like. That's
Okay.
a great one. Yeah. So don't feel inhibited at all.
Okay.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah.
That was almost a mic drop moment, but
Yeah.
but we have stuff that we have to add too. So, Lev, you want to go?
I'll add a few. I have a lot.
Sure.
One is recognize how you are showing up. Right. Be aware. If you don't know, ask somebody. Another is find out what motivates individuals, not just kind of generalities around motivation, because everyone's different. I liked what Kammy said, and I wrote it down as celebrate the happy things. And it's not like a lot of it. Celebrate the win is like, yeah, but there's a lot of other things that can be celebrated that are happy moments, happy things. So I love that. And I'll do one more, and it is going to be just really listen to people. Listen. Listen, like one of the ways I sometimes talk about it is listen like your life depends on it.
I like that.
Yeah. Patsy?
Well, I'll add to the listening skills. I was really impressed that you said be prepared. So come prepared, be willing to collaborate, and you added later on, and respond. It goes back to that two-way. We have to respond. I wrote down, notice how our language generates who we are.
Oh, I like
And
that.
it goes with Leb's. Help people focus on their strengths. Boy, how is that a counterintuitive move or a counter move in leadership? When you said that, I thought about all the mentors I've had that helped me focus on the few I had that helped me focus on my strengths. That building and keeping trust is foundational.
Yeah.
And there were a number of points at that. So
Okay.
What would you add, Patrick?
I'm gonna add, Kammy, I loved when the story of you getting rid of your car and immersing yourself. So really, that's the takeaway: is immerse yourself in your customer's world. What are they experiencing? Be open to learning and experiencing what they're going through and meeting them where they are. If you really want to hear the voice of the customer, I thought that was great. I love the coaching that you got from your son. Different people from different generations and different backgrounds and different experiences may show up in ways that I'm not used to. Pause when that happens so that I don't demoralize them by shutting them down. I just thought that was really insightful. The last story you told, it's probably my favorite phrase. So I feel like it's about time that makes one of our Let's Get Practicals is really utilize the phrase, tell me more. Right. That it's very easy when you hear something, especially when you hear something that maybe you don't like, it's easy to become defensive and want to respond. And yet you didn't. You responded with 3 words that just invite more data and more information. Tell me more. And then listen. So which is a theme that ran through all of this, right? Listen more, speak less, listen more. And that's what you did by utilizing the phrase, tell me more. I had one more. Okay, and this is a little self-serving because as Leb said, we do executive coaching, but you said, your words were get yourself an executive coach. At least I think those were your words. That's what I heard. That's what I wanted to hear you say. Get yourself an executive coach that you may think you can't afford it, but maybe you can't afford not to, and that the ROI can be significant. help us see our blind spots. And you talked about having that safe space to be your outlet, to let go of some of the negative stuff, so that when you're when you're with your team, when you're at work, that's not spilling out. That's a role that an executive coach can serve with you, is creating that safe space, helping you process through so that you can then show up back at the office and respond in that more productive and positive way. So I thought that was insightful. We kind of go around again. Any more that anyone would like to add that you feel like is significant? Kammy, you led off, and I feel like there was just so much. So is there anything else you want to add? And if not, that's okay too.
Oh, I just appreciate what you all are doing. And this was way more fun than I thought it was going to be. And so I enjoyed it. This has actually been the most enjoyable part of my day. And I just want to thank you all. That this is amazing to be here with you. And I think it's great that you're sharing this information on your platform. And it's awesome. So.
Well, right back at you. Leb has been excited and telling us how great you will be you already are, but how great you will be as a guest for weeks and weeks. And so it's as someone who just met you for the first time today, I can tell you he probably even undersold you. I just think you're fantastic. So,
well, I do have a request, Patrick. And I know I just interrupted you. Still working on interrupting.
It's all right.
And I got defensive yesterday when someone said, "Don't interrupt." I don't interrupt. But I just want to ask, if there's a way to put something in this podcast that's like fun facts about history that you never knew, because that way I could really sell it to my kids to listen to.
You don't think they'll listen just because it's their mom?
I don't know. Maybe if we have some like awesome music, but no, I don't know if they would. Maybe.
Well, if you tell them they made the Let's Get Practical, I mean,
yeah.
They have to listen to all the way.
At least that.
You want to give a shout out? What are their names, or do you not want to do that?
No, I can give their names. My oldest son, his name is Moses, and then my 17-year-old is Niall. Actually, he's almost 18. That he reminds me constantly. So, yeah.
Very
thanks
cool.
for letting me.
Names.
Yeah, they're great, and yeah. Anyway, this was awesome.
Beautiful. Leb or Patsy, any more that you wanted to add to our Let's Get Practical, or did we cover everything?
There's one more.
Okay, go for it.
When we were talking about Kammy's CEO and the way she described some of his traits, and I took it as, be a leader who starts relationships at a good place. People aren't there kind of trembling. I'm talking to this person, and he's, whatever that may mean to you out there. I love that. Servant leadership and all that I love too, but that really struck me. How do you be with people in such a way that they feel comfortable and valued? And that's where you start from, as opposed to I have to prove something or anything, make up for something or pretend something. It's like, I love that. I'd like to hear more about that. That was awesome.
You know why? We didn't talk about this, but I'll say one more thing, because I just mentioned my kid's name, so it sparked something. And then what you're saying, Leb, about my CEO, is that has a trickle down effect. Mm-hmm. When you're nice to the people that work with you, they can go home or wherever they go. I mean, whoever, and the people that are around them, it's nicer, right? Like, it's not like, oh, wow, like mom or dad just, came home and they're so out of sorts. And so being a leader that is kinder and open. I'll say this too. One more thing. My son Niall said to me on a recent drive, actually it was about a year ago, because I hadn't been here 3 years yet. He said, "Mom, I want to tell you, you're a nicer person since you started working at VIA."
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, and I do think the leadership matters, right? Like, wow, I'm showing up nicer to my family, I don't know. But
That's great.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. Trickle it down. Pass it
Yeah.
around.
On the heels of that, not that we talked about it, but I think you demonstrated it, is show up as an authentic leader and consistently live your values.
Mhm.
That's
I
good.
think you've been a fantastic example of that.
Oh, thank you.
Agreed. Kammy, if someone who's listening wants to learn more about you, wants to get in touch with you, or if they are interested in potentially the organization that you talked about, Women in Transportation Service, WTS. Did I get that correct?
Women's Transportation Seminar, WTS. Yep.
Okay. How can they reach any of those organizations or you? Or now's the time to give a shout out or a pitch for anything that you'd want to highlight.
Oh, sure. I don't want to mess up the website, but it might be WTSinternational.org. But you can Google that, and so you can look up that. I mean, you can reach me. It's Kammy.Horne at viainfo.net, and that's fine. That's fine too. So
And that's Horne with an E, Horne.
Horne. Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so. Yeah. And I would encourage anyone who did want to check out WTS too. People can ask me about that as well. And I love to put people in touch with their own chapters, wherever they're listening from.
Awesome.
Great organization.
Beautiful.
Oh, that's great.
Anything else for the good of the cause?
I think we got it.
Been great.
Kammy Horne, thank you so much for joining us today. Leb, thank you for bringing on such a fantastic guest. Patsy, as always, thank you for your insights. Listener, thank you for sticking with us for the entirety of the episode. Don't forget, you can download this episode's Let's Get Practical directly from our website, thefrustratedceo.com. And then please do like and share the episode. Give us feedback. Let us know. We want to listen as well. Let us know how we can improve the show, or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, or if you have a guest suggestion, by all means, get in touch with any of us through the website directly, and we'd love to connect with you. That's it. I think we're good. Have a great rest of your day, and thank you again for joining us on The Frustrated CEO.